Okay, everybody, the January 3rd, 2018 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Elkoffer. Here. Mr. Ansello. Here. Mr. Baroth. Here. Ms. Boyce. Here. Mr. Brew. Here. Dr. Carbone.
Here.
Mrs. Conley. Here. Mr. Delahanty.
Here.
Mrs. DeFlorio.
Here.
Mrs. Draw.
Here.
Mr. Felder.
Here.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Here.
Ms. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Mr. Howland.
Here.
Ms. Cayley.
Here.
Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Marionetti.
Here.
Mr. Michike.
Here.
Mr. Morelli is excused. Mr. Moyo.
Here.
Mr. Rocco.
Here.
Mr. Shepard.
Here.
Ms. Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Terp.
Here.
Mr. Wilcox.
Here.
Mr. Zale.
Okay, pursuant to Section 545-5 of the Rules of the Legislature of the County of Monroe, and at the written direction of 19 legislators, a majority of all members of the Monroe County Legislature, this special meeting has been called for the purpose of electing a president of the Monroe County Legislature.
There is a hearing loop in place to assist those who are hearing impaired. Anyone requiring assistance should inquire in the clerk's office.
The floor is now open for the purpose of nominating a temporary president of the legislature. Are there any nominations? Legislator Marionetti.
Yes, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to nominate Debbie Draw to serve as temporary president of the legislature.
Have a second?
Second. Mr. President, I also second the nomination of Debbie Brown to serve as temporary president of the Monroe County Legislature.
Okay, seconded by Legislator Conley and Legislator Cayley. Are there any other nominations?
President,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Monroe for temporary president of the legislature.
Is there a second? Okay. Second by Flagler Mitchell. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I now declare that nominations for temporary president of the legislature be closed. When the clerk calls the roll, please respond by stating the last name of the nominee of your choice. If you choose not to vote for a candidate, please respond by stating abstain. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Marionetti.
Draw.
Ms. Cayley. Mr. Elkoffer. Mr. Ansello. Mr. Baroth. Ms. Boyce. Mr. Brew. Dr. Carbone.
Draw.
Mrs. Conley. Mr. Delahanty.
Draw.
Mrs. DeFlorio. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Felder. Mr. Flagler Mitchell. Ms. Harris. Mr. Hebert.
Draw.
Mr. Howland. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Michike. Mr. Morelli. I'm sorry. Mr. Moyo. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Shepard. Ms. Taylor. Mr. Terp. Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Zale. 17-7.
Legislator Draw, please come forward and assume the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this is nice up here. Thank you for selecting me to lead this to lead this meeting. So let's proceed. Okay. Please everyone stay seated and join me in a moment of silence. And if we could please stand, and would Anthony Daniele like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now hold a public forum. You may be seated. We will now hold the public forum. Do we have anyone registered to address the legislature, Madam Clerk?
There is no one registered to speak this evening.
The floor is now open for the purpose of nominating a permanent president of the legislature. Are there any nominations? Legislator Marianetti.
Thank you, Legislator Draw. It would be my honor to nominate my colleague and my friend, Dr. Joe Carbone, to serve as our president, our current vice president from District 16, to serve as our president of this legislature. Thank you.
Do you have a second?
Legislator Draw, I'd like to second the nomination of Dr. Joe Carbone to serve as president of this legislature.
Thank you, Legislators Marianetti and Conley. Are there any other nominations? Legislator Moyo.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to nominate for president.
We have a nomination, a second by Legislator Lightfoot. I now declare that the nominations for the permanent president of the legislature be closed. When the clerk calls the roll, will you please respond by stating the last name of the nominee of your choice? If you choose not to vote for a candidate, you should please respond by stating abstain. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Marianetti?
Carbone.
Ms. Cayley? Mr. Elkoffer?
Carbone.
Mr. Ansello?
Carbone.
Mr. Baroth? Ms. Boyce? Mr. Brew? Dr. Carbone? Mrs. Conley? Mr. Delahanty?
Carbone.
Mrs. DeFlorio? Mrs. Draw?
Carbone.
Mr. Felder? Mr. Flagler Mitchell? Ms. Harris? Mr. Hebert?
Carbone.
Mr. Howland? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Mafucci? Mr. Michike? Mr. Moyo? Mr. Rocco? Mr. Shepard? Ms. Taylor? Mr. Terp? Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Zale? 17 to 10.
Congratulations, Dr. Carbone. I would now like to invite all the former presidents, including Presidents Daniele, Adair, Zaire, and Auberger, all to escort our new president to the podium, please. Coming this way. Are you coming this way?
I was going to be very happy, but I just got a phone call from Bob Burns and my car got smashed on the C street. So it's sort of like, it doesn't make it so nice. But Happy New Year and welcome. And I hope everyone had a great holiday season. First off, I'd like to acknowledge our county executive. She couldn't be here tonight. She's racing back from Albany. She attended the State of the State, but I look forward to working with her and her team. Thanks to Majority Leader Marianetti and Deputy Majority Leader Conley for the nomination and second. Your confidence in me to serve as president is truly humbling. I'd also like to formally recognize the past presidents, Anthony Daniele, Jeff Adair, Wayne Zyra, Jack Auberger, and I'd like to thank them for all their service to Monroe County. Also, I'd like to thank our party chairs, Bill Rylick of the Republican Party, Tom Cook, who couldn't be here, Conservative Party, Steve Korn of the Independence Party, Jesse Lenny of the Working Families Party, and Jamie Romeo of the Democratic Party. I'd also like to thank Majority Leader Brian Marionetti again and Minority Leader Cynthia Cayley for their hard work and leadership in their respective caucuses. I'm looking forward to working with your new leadership teams in the coming year. I'd also like to welcome a new legislator, Howard Mafucci, who will be representing the 10th Legislative District. Howard, I got your super secret county pins that I'm going to present to you right now. You can't get in without these. There you go.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right. I'm truly thankful to have been elected by this honorable body to serve as president of the Monroe County Legislature. While I'm looking forward to continuing to work with my colleagues from both sides of the aisle in my new position, I would be remiss not to mention the legacy left behind by my predecessor, Anthony Danielli. Anthony proved himself to be a true friend, colleague, leader, and mentor. Anthony's strong leadership has led to many great accomplishments, and I'm looking forward to building on those successes as I take on the role of president. Thank you, Anthony. I would not be here today without the love and support of my family and friends. Some I've known for years, and others I've made during my time in public service. I'd like to recognize a few. Two men who have been a mentor to me since day one and have become very close friends, Chairman Bill Rylick and our former Majority Leader, Steve Tucciarello. Where are you, Steve? Thank you very much for all you've done for me. I still call Steve maybe 3 times a week, correct? And a funny story about Chairman Bill, when I first started this foray into politics, he interviewed me, and his first response was, "You were so wrong, you've got to be right." and here's the rest of the story. I've got some lifelong friends in the audience, and I'm going to go through them quickly. I got my man Joe Comfort, 40 years. Kenny Vasile, Billy Masucci, Louis Fico, Dr. John Garneau and his wife, Dr. Diana Garneau. My old treasurer and my new treasurer, Peter Mendick and Kim Rotoli. And who could forget Brother Wees? Thank you, Brother Wees, for all you do. My 2 partners who have been with me through 3 campaigns, Dr. Ed Bonneville and Dr. David Chazen. A special thank you to my mother, Loretta. Big Loretta, like Brother Wees named her 25 years ago. Correct, Brother Wees? And the loves of my life, my wife and my daughter, Roma. Without them, I could have never done all this. Without their support, thank you very much. If I missed anyone, I'm truly sorry, but you know how much you mean to me. I have served in the legislature for 5 years, and it's truly an honor to be assuming the role of president of the Monroe County Legislature and to continue to represent my constituents in the 16th District of Arundecoit. While the districts and people we represent have many differences, we all come to these chambers with the same goal, to make Monroe County the best it can be. I know that by working together, we can continue to best serve the residents of our district. As president, I look forward to, with each of you, to keep Monroe County moving in the right direction. I pledge to myself, as I pledge to my fellow legislators, and most of all the people from Monroe County, that in this new year of 2018, we all work together, create hope, build courage, and regain faith, that we strive to overcome our political differences and set our sights on what is best for our constituents. Let us all remember where our duties lie. There are those who say they are just words, a slogan, a phrase. Let us make sure that our words, slogans, and phrases are backed by deeds, action, and honor to the offices we hold. Thank you again for all your support. And what I wish for myself and my family, I wish for all of you in the new year. Happy New Year. Thank you once again, and God bless. Now, as my first action as president, I would like to designate Legislator Debbie Draw to serve as the Vice President of the Legislature. Congratulations, Legislator Draw. There being no further business to come before this body, I now recognize Mr. Marionetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. We stand adjourned until 6 p.m. Tuesday, January 9th, 2018.